Hiya guys, welcome to the Dutch channel. Thank you very much for tuning in, and this here is the Foxeer RF5 ready to go freestyle 5-inch quadcopter. And in this video I'm gonna review it. I'm also gonna be comparing it to this here quadcopter. This is actually also a Foxeer RF5, but I selected the parts for this one myself. Yeah, that's it. This, in my humble opinion, is one of the best quadcopters that was released this year. And in this video I'm basically going to tell you if this is still a good choice. And I've flown this quadcopter for at least 50 times. This one far more, so I definitely know what's up with these quadcopters. So, review time, here we go.
You serious?
Now these two aren't actually my only RF5s. I have at this moment five RF5s. Yeah, so in this video I'm gonna referring to some of the other RF5s I have and comparing this ready to go version of Foxeer's RF5 to those. So is this one better maybe than the ones I built myself and selected the parts for myself, or in some ways would I have preferred them to use other motors, other stacks, etc. So Foxeer's freestyle quadcopter, and I think it's fair to say that freestyle 5-inch quadcopters is one of the most popular kinds of quadcopters around. So this for Foxeer is an important quadcopter. Also for us as consumers it's good to have more options. So it's good to see Foxeer now branching out into ready-to-fly quadcopters. In the past, well, they started obviously with cameras, and what was next? VTXs maybe, stacks. They've been in the electronics game for 1.5 years by now, and well, in the last year they have released quite a few actually. A very broad selection of ready-to-go quadcopters. Now this RF5 you see here is an analog version. It can also be had as a DJI version 2 or DJI O3 version, and there's even an HD0 version. Yeah. So again, I have the 6S analog version here, and I run mine with an ELRS receiver, as you see over here. Well, you see the antenna, right? The receiver is actually positioned right behind the camera. Yeah, so let's start actually with the frame. Now again, I have 5 of these. And I have had more. I've sold off a couple because, well, you can only have so many quadcopters. And I have 5 because, first of all, I like building quadcopters, but also I like these frames very much. They are pretty simple, right? You've got a bottom plate in 2 levels. Then you've got 4 arms and standoffs and a top plate, and that's more or less it. You've got some TPU parts, of course, but it's a no-nonsense frame. Also, this TPU print for a DJI Action 2 camera, I've printed myself. It doesn't come with a quadcopter. Yeah, so these frames, they are stiff and they make tuning the quadcopter easy. What does that mean? Well, I don't have means to... Well, I don't go into black box logging too much. So I definitely don't know if these frames absorb or filter out vibrations very well. Long story short, tuning quadcopters with this frame is easy. So for what it's worth, I think that says something about the vibration isolation in these frames. Also, one of the negatives I wanted to bring to bear for this frame was the parts availability. In the past, Foxeer didn't offer spare parts for their frames. However, they've already solved that, partly because I complained about it. Yeah, probably also others complained about it. But by now they actually offer spare parts for all their frames, so that's no longer a downside of their frames. There is, however, one downside to, well, the frames and the RTF version. They come with these plastic, a lot of quadcopters now come with these plastic wire guards, I guess. And I must admit that I sometimes use them myself, partly because I'm simply lazy, but they're not great. They kind of shatter on impact and after that they kind of cut your wires instead of protecting the wires. I think Mr. Bartwell alluded to that as well. These guards, yeah, they make the building easier, but it's better to use tape. So yeah, I probably will never be using these again. Again, it's easy to use them, and if you want to build your quadcopters quick and easy, yeah, they come with the frame, and also they are pre-installed on the ready to fly. But yeah, if you hit a branch in a tree, for instance, they can shatter, and after that they're simply in the way and can potentially cut your wires. So that's a downside of this quadcopter, but not only this one. iFlight uses these protectors, and Diaton probably also. HLC maybe. A lot of the manufacturers use these, as it makes the building process in the factory probably a lot easier as well, as opposed to using tape. Then the motors and the propeller combination. Actually, why don't I show you one of the flights I did with this quadcopter while I'll tell you about this power setup of this quadcopter. So 2305.5 motors. Which is kind of typical for a freestyle quadcopter, right? A lot of freestyle setups use that motor size. Personally, I kind of prefer 2207.5 or 2208 even. But that's a personal thing. I like my torque to be evenly spread out along the the throttle curve, if you will. And these kinds of motors, these 2305.5s, tend to deliver their torque lower down in your throttle range, making your quadcopter seem more responsive. And maybe it even makes flying them easier. So maybe that's why this is a popular motor size for freestyle quadcopters. The propellers on this quadcopter are new Cyclones, and the new Cyclone propellers can be had in different pitches. And you would expect Foxeer to use the slowest pitch for a freestyle quadcopter. However, they haven't. This is basically a racing propeller. I'm not even sure what pitch this is. I'll put it on screen. Obviously, you can throw other propellers on this quadcopter. But if you get the ready to fly, you get them with these gray new Cyclones in a racing pitch, which makes for a fast quadcopter. Yeah. And no surprise, and while you're watching my flight, you can probably see that this quadcopter is pretty fast. And it is one of the fastest of my RF5s. And that's fun. I actually like that. And I had expected that to result in more propulse oscillations, because the propeller will stall out sooner. Yeah, maybe a little bit, but it's still a good freestyle setup somehow, this. I didn't have hardly any actually propulse oscillations on this setup. You can get there if you want to, if you go and look for propulse oscillations, but this is definitely not a hard quadcopter to fly smoothly. So that's weird. Also, that says something about these motors, them being able to manage these propellers with a higher pitch. So yeah, that's a positive thing about these motors. By the way, I don't know if Foxeer makes these motors themselves. I'm a fan of RCM Power motors, RCM Power motors, and maybe these are made by RCM Power. I know in the past Foxeer used RCM Power motors, and I don't know. I simply don't know. Foxeer does say they make their own motors, but I can't see why they would. Why? Yeah, okay, so maybe there's a bigger margin in it by making your own motors. But again, these motors are fine. I haven't crashed this quadcopter a lot, and only on grassy fields, not against trees and not on pavement, so I can't say anything about the durability of these motors. They perform great though. And the last thing about the comparison between this ready to fly and my self-built quadcopters or my self-built RF5s, the other four have either RCM Power Smoogs motors, or T-motor F60 Pro V's, Pro 5s. So definitely not bad motors and not budget motors either. And that actually kind of goes for these Foxeer motors as well. Foxeer isn't a budget brand at all, but again, these motors, the Foxeer motors, are up against, well, proven T-motor motors and RCM power motors, and yeah, they definitely don't come out worse than the stack Foxeer uses in this ready-to-fly setup. It is a 30.5 by 30.5 stack, which disappointed me a little bit. Actually, the first RF5 I built myself was with a 20 by 20 Foxeer stack, and that's been faultless. So I had kind of hoped that they would use a 20 by 20 stack, would make the quadcopter a little bit lighter, but also a little bit easier to work on, as you can get to the solder pads for the motors without taking the flight controller off. Other than that, yeah, this 30.5 by 30.5 stack is probably easier to work on, but it's ready to fly. So yeah, maybe these are a little less costly to make for Foxeer. Or that might be the case, maybe some customers wouldn't trust a 20 by 20 stack in a 5-inch freestyle quadcopter. I could imagine that to be the case. So maybe they went with a 30.5 by 30.5 stack for that reason. And obviously it fits just fine in this frame. Other than that, it's a Foxeer stack, and Foxeer stacks have basically been faultless with me. You tell me in the comment section below what your experiences are. Obviously I haven't had hundreds of Foxeer stacks myself. I've had like 4, and again, been faultless with me, but you tell me in the comment section below what your experiences have been with Foxeer electronics. Next thing, the FPV setup. So yeah, I've done a couple of videos about their Reaper VTX 1.6 watt, and it's been fine, but it's not earth-shattering to me. Maybe the range is great, but I'm no long-range pilot, and this is a freestyle quadcopter also. So yeah, I would maybe have preferred a slightly lighter, even though it's not all that heavy. Yeah, maybe the quadcopter could have been a little less costly with a different VTX, as it doesn't perform any better than, say, my Rush 800 milliwatt VTXs. But it's been fine. Actually, let me show you one of the DVRs from this setup. As you can see, it's relatively clean. There's a minute stepping in the recording. Maybe you won't even see it, but I see it in the Goggle a little bit. But basically it's pretty clean. And I have built this quadcopter myself, because when I ordered the parts, the Ready to Fly wasn't in yet. But I've ordered all the parts that go into the Ready to Fly. So again, maybe the Ready to Fly is a little bit cleaner. Other than that, they use a Foxeer 2+2, which is a camera I'd use. Great. Nice resolution, and great for a freestyle setup. As you can see, you can definitely see what you need to see with this setup. And I should also mention this FPV antenna, the Foxeer Lollipop 4, but this is their 10 centimeter version, so a little bit longer than you typically see, and this actually improves your penetration and range. It sticks a little bit more above your LiPo, I guess. I was actually surprised to see this made quite a difference, more than I had expected. And it's a bit of background information. This was the setup I flew. I always had the DJI Action 2 in the quadcopter. I always flew the quadcopter on these 1100 milliamp hour 6S CNHL black labels. I am kind of transitioning to slightly bigger LiPos, but with this setup I hardly had to do any tuning at all. More on that in a second. Yeah, so a relatively light LiPo, I guess, 1100 milliamp hour. And with this combination, so with the action camera, I got to approximately 5 minutes of flight time. If you go balls to the wall, you obviously get shorter flight times. And if you, baby the quadcopter, you get longer flight times. But in a typical flight, in a typical freestyle flight, I got to 5 minutes with this setup, which is also not unexpected by me with these propellers, these higher pitch propellers. Okay, this is the radio I flew for this quadcopter. This is the brand new Frsky X18 Special Edition. Oh, it now has the Crossfire module in it, but obviously in that case with an ELRS module in the radio. And this here is the Orqa Pilot One goggle. In some of the flights I used the predecessor, the original Orqa One, but yeah, so I recently replaced it with this, the Pilot One. Okay, short word on the tuning of this quadcopter. I assume that Foxeer ships these quadcopters tuned. However, that's, is that even possible? Because if you run a heavier LiPo or a bigger action camera or no action camera, that all has an impact on your tune, right? However, on the stock setup, so without an action camera and with an 1100 milliamp hour battery, I ran this quadcopter on stock Betaflight. No tuning at all. With an action camera, I bumped up the master manipulator to 1.1, and that's it. That's all the tuning I had to do with this quadcopter. So super duper easy, and that's more or less the setup I run on all my RF5s, and that, well, works out every time. So super duper easy. Again, that's one of the reasons why I like these frames a lot. Alright, 2 more things in this video. Are there downsides to this Foxeer RF5? Probably there are always downsides. And would I recommend it? Those are the 2 things left for this video. Would this actually make for a nice Christmas present? If you order it now, you could probably get it in for Christmas. So, downsides. Yeah, it looks a little bit dull. In my humble opinion, of course, but it's all grey. The only color is the antenna. And as it is, that color is even a little bit out of place, right? It should have been a black or grey antenna. But yeah, so grey propellers, and there's hardly any color to the motors. Yeah, it's, I can imagine actually that Foxeer loses sales on that, because the quadcopter looks a little bit dull, unexciting. Actually, let me show you one of my other Foxeer RF5s. This here, this is also an analog version, and yeah, these are the same propellers actually, but in lime green. Looks a lot better. This one might be a little bit overboard on the colors with the blue of the T-motor motors. TPU print also blue, and FV camera, I'm not sure if you'll be able to see that, but it's also blue. Yeah, so, but looks a little bit more lively. Also, however, if you don't care about the looks of your quadcopter, if you crash your quadcopter in a tree or in tall grass, this one might kind of be harder to find back. Right, so that's one of the reasons why you put colorful propellers on your quadcopter. So that is, yeah, that is definitely a downside. Second downside, again, I wanted to allude to the parts availability, but by now parts are available. That's still a little bit of a downside because you don't see frame parts in local shops. That's probably because there are a million frames by now, so shops keeping up stock for all frames. But at least you can order frame parts from Foxeer by now. However, the second real downside is the price. Foxeer isn't a budget brand. I've told you a couple of times in this video, and therefore I don't know what this quadcopter will cost at the time you're watching this video, but I can assure you it won't be cheap. Again, Foxeer doesn't profile themselves as being a budget brand. It is a great quadcopter, but yeah, you definitely pay for what you get. And so that brings me to the last thing. Would I recommend it? And yeah, if you've seen and listened to this video, I'm sure you won't be surprised if I tell you that I do recommend this quadcopter. In fact, When I ordered up this quadcopter, I had kind of planned to be setting it off after the review, and maybe I will, but it's better. This motor, for instance, is better than I had expected, and yeah, the frame I obviously like. The stack works out well. This VTX, yeah, it works, but it's no super duper VTX. But still, I would definitely recommend this quadcopter. If you order up this quadcopter, I can assure you, you won't be disappointed. It's always a little bit of a gamble for me as a reviewer, right? Do I recommend something? And then potentially have people come back to me saying, yeah, I had a terrible experience with this quadcopter. How dare you recommend this quadcopter? Or any other product. In this case, I'm pretty secure in recommending you this Foxeer R5 RTF. Yeah, and whichever version you pick. Also, if you have the HE0 version, tell me in the comment section below how you like that one. Yeah, and well, that's it. Yeah, I had hoped to be able to find more downside caveats, but it's a great quadcopter. The price and the looks might be downsides to you. You also tell me in the comment section below what you think of the pricing of this quadcopter and what it looks like. And that's it. I hope this was informative to you. If you are left with questions, hit me up and comment down below. Catch you on the next video. Bye bye.